Hi guys, it's Alexandra here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you the second installment in my Let's Be Real series. The first one in this series I talked about Let's Be Real honest reader thoughts, and after I got done filming that video I realized that there were several more honest reader thoughts that I wanted to share with you. So I figured before moving on to the next topic in this series I would do part 2 to my honest reader thoughts. So let's go ahead and get into this. All right, so the first honest reader thought is that I don't really care for this hyper focus that happens on BookTube with reading a ton of books each month. Now, let me just say that I really don't care whether you read half a book a month or 20 books a month. Whatever pace of reading works for you is amazing. But I feel like over the last year or so, I've noticed that over the last year or so, I have noticed this trend on BookTube of people being hyper focused on reading a ton of pages each week or reading a ton of books each month. And sometimes it feels like they're not as focused on enjoying the story and they're more focused on just consuming a lot of content. And that's okay if that's what they want. But for me, as a reader and somebody watching channels, I want to actually hear people reading books who are taking the time to enjoy them. If you can read 20 books a month and enjoy them all and really understand what you're reading and connect with the characters, great, read 20 books a month. But often I feel like that's not the case. People are just consuming a ton to say that they read a ton of books, and a lot of the fun of reading is kind of sucked out of it when that's the game that we're playing. So you read as many books a month as you want. It's okay if you go through months where you don't read any books. And I don't know, on average, I usually read about 3 books a month. The last couple months have been more because my schedule has been very different working from home. But I don't know, I'd like to see more of a focus here on BookTube of reading books for enjoying the content and kind of leaving to the side the focus on page numbers read or number of books read each month. That would be something that I would like to see a return to. Let me know if you have noticed this trend or if it's just me and maybe some of the particular channels that I've been watching recently. Also, side note, I think part of the reason that I don't care for that trend of being hyper-focused on number of pages read and number of books read is that I feel like for especially new people to the BookTube community, new people watching our videos, it can kind of promote this bad idea that you have to read a ton each month to be a real reader, and that's not the case. You are a real reader if you love books and you've read books. Like that's my opinion. Just kind of like with running, I think you're a runner if you run. But that's maybe beside the point, but I wanted to add that in there. My next reader thought is that I have mixed feelings about TBRs. Now, what I mean by this is that my next reader thought is that I have mixed feelings about TBRs. I love watching them. I love other people doing them. I even like making them. But I am such a mood reader that it is almost impossible for me to set a TBR at the beginning of the month and stick to that even remotely closely by the end of the month. And so I have mixed feelings because I genuinely, watching TBRs are some of my favorite videos to watch here on BookTube, and I love crafting together TBRs for readathons or even just like a month in general. But for me, I make a TBR and almost instantaneously my mind's like, nope, I don't want to read those anymore. I want to read that book over there. And so I get so sidetracked that I don't even know if it's worth it sometimes for me to personally make TBRs. And I think that's why I love readathons, but they're hard for me to do because they almost all rely on having very specific TBRs so that you achieve the prompts. And I'm really bad at that. I did pretty good with the Owls Readathon, but I had to even change one of the prompts in the middle of the month so that I could achieve my Owls TBR. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about TBRs. I love watching them. I hope people continue to make them because I enjoy them that much. And I will probably still make TBR videos in the future. But please know that if I make a TBR video, there's a strong possibility that at least one, if not more, of those books will be changed before the end of that time frame that the TBR was for. Just being honest. My next honest reader thought is that I don't really care whether a book is hardcover or paperback. It just depends on the situation. And what I mean by that is I know that a lot of people feel very strongly towards one type of book over the other. Like maybe they really love hardcovers because they're more durable, or they love paperbacks because they're less heavy and they're more transportable. But I know that a lot of people have very strong feelings about hardcover versus paperback. Hardcover, they're more durable. They kind of withstand the beatings of taking a book from place to place. But on the other hand, paperback, they're lighter and they're easier to transport around. It's fun when they're floppy. I get it. I like both types of books, and I tend to gravitate towards one over the other depending on the type of book. Sorry if I'm in a slightly different place. I keep hitting my Run Disney virtual 5K medals over here and making them clink, and it's really annoying. Okay, back to the topic of hardcover versus paperback. When I was a younger reader, like elementary school and middle school, and even in high school to some extent, I absolutely loved hardcovers. I loved them because I didn't destroy them as easily. They felt very special, like, oh man, this book is really something. Look at how beautiful it is. But as I've gotten older, I've really started to gravitate towards the paperbacks because they are lighter. I can take them on the go and read them. And I find that I enjoy the feeling of reading a paperback book quite a lot. With that being said, I think the floppiness test is key to finding a paperback book that is the most enjoyable read. So I'm going to go get a couple examples and show you what I mean by that. Okay, so I have 4 books here. They are all paperback, and I want to show you the difference between, oh my goodness. Okay, so I have 4 books here. They are all paperback, and I want to show you the difference between what I mean when I say a book is a very floppy paperback and it is more of a pleasant reading experience, and a non-floppy paperback and I end up having to break the spines every single time, regardless of whether I want to or not. Okay, let's start with the floppy paperbacks. So this is Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. All right, let's start with the floppy paperbacks that I think are personally a much more pleasant reading experience. This is Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. So look at how nice that is. The pages flop down from the cover. It opens up without having to press or pull on the spine. I love this. I've read this whole book and you wouldn't even know it because the spine shows absolutely no signs of creaking. I've read this whole book and you wouldn't know it because the spine shows no signs of having been cracked or broken. I don't really care, I guess, if the spine gets cracked or broken if I love the book, but if I had a preference, I would prefer my books to not be all messed up if they don't have to be, I guess. Does that make sense? Another example is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. See, this one is very much the same, just nice and floppy. You can open it up all the way and read the whole page without having to press and pry on the spine. So those would be two examples of books that I consider a pleasant level of floppiness and much better to read from. Now, for two books that are absolutely the opposite of that, and when I read them, I will have to break their spines. The first one is Raspberry Danish Murder. I've read this book, but I read the ebook version of it and then got the paper copy after I was done. But this is like stiff as a board. It's not going anywhere. So I will have to break the spine to be able to really read the words that are close into the spine. Again, it doesn't really matter, I guess, in the long run. It's just if I had a preference, I don't really want to break the spines unless I have to. And this one I would certainly have to. And the next example of definitely not floppy paperbacks would be Blue Lily, Lily Blue. In fact, the entirety of this series by Maggie Stiefvater, at least the versions that I have, are awful when it comes to floppiness. This literally doesn't move at all. And also, I ordered this from Amazon, and the tips of some of the pages are water damaged. And this was supposed to be brand new, which is incredibly, incredibly disappointing. All right, my next honest reader thought is probably going to get some of you going because I'm sure that I have some viewers who are super fans of these authors, so please don't take this the wrong way. I would love to be a part of these. Okay, so my next honest reader thought is probably going to get some of you pretty up in arms and excited, but listen to me and hear me out before you judge me. And that is that I am incredibly intimidated by Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter saga and by Sarah J. Maas as authors. And I have the Crescent City House of Earth and Blood back here because I desperately want to be a part of the Sarah J. Maas fandom. But for some reason, I am incredibly intimidated by her book series, especially Throne of Glass. I think because people have such varying likes and dislikes about the series, and so I've been hesitant to pick it up and get started. And I thought that maybe this would be the in here because there's only one book in the series right now, so I can kind of read it and jump on the bandwagon while the series is new. But I really do want to be a fan of Sarah J. Maas, and I just don't know where to start. I don't know whether to read her Throne of Glass series first or whether to read A Court of Thorns and Roses series first. I just don't know where to start. So if you've read her books and you have an opinion on where I should start, that would be great. I would appreciate it. I want to be a part of the fandom. I just haven't gotten there yet. Probably even more so than Sarah J. Maas. I am so intimidated by Cassandra Clare and the Shadowhunters saga. I just don't even know where to start. I literally watch people's reading vlogs, and I'm okay with being spoiled. It really doesn't bother me. But I watch their reading vlogs and I hear them talk about the books. I'm like, man, I really think that I would like those. And then I start looking up more about the series, and people are making videos about the proper order to read the books in, and I've never felt more intimidated by a book series in my life than to know that there's apparently proper ways to read the books. And I don't know, man. I want to be a part of the fandom. I want to jump on the bandwagon. Chain of Gold sounds great, and I've heard that you can read that without having read the others, but it might not be as meaningful of an experience. I don't know. Let me know if you're a Cassandra Clare fan and tell me where I should start. Should I start with The City of Bones, or should I start with Chain of Gold? Should I start someplace else? I don't know. But Sarah J. Maas and Cassandra Clare as authors, their book series, intimidate me. And the fandoms are so devoted that I'm also a little intimidated by that. But if you're a part of either of those fandoms and have some suggestions on starting points, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks. On a less serious note, my next honest reader thought is that I really love it when ebook pages turn like regular pages. I don't know if you know what I mean, but when I read from the Libby app on my iPad, when you go to flip a page, it just like swipes the screen over. Whereas when I read from my Google Play books, it like you can see the corners of the page turn. And there is something so satisfying about seeing an ebook page turn like a regular book page. I know that it doesn't really matter in the long run and that that's very superficial, but it definitely does improve my reading experience. So there's that. I talked about this next one. I talked about this next one a little bit in my Chit Chat Get Ready With Me that I just filmed, but my next honest reader thought is that I am super excited about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and about Midnight Sun. So The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes just released yesterday, and I didn't pre-order it because the mail has been really funky. I ordered a Bible 4 weeks ago and I still don't have it, so I didn't want to order it and then just not get it. I think I'll just do curbside pickup when I go to my apartment next. But I'm really excited for the prequel to the Hunger Games series. I know a lot of people were hoping that the story would be about Haymitch or Mags, and we're a little disappointed, essentially, that it's going to be about President Snow as a young person. And I get that. If I had my preference, the story would have been about Haymitch and when he was in the Hunger Games, because he was my favorite character, or at least one of my favorite characters from the original trilogy. But it is what it is. There's a whole lot of world that we have not explored in the Hunger Games series, and so I'm okay with her starting with President Snow's backstory. And with that, and with Midnight Sun, I know a lot of people do not like the Twilight series anymore, that its heyday is essentially past, that there are definitely problematic aspects to the book, but I genuinely enjoy the series. I just finished a reread. It's super nostalgic for me. It was a huge reading and movie-going experience for me in high school, and I cannot wait for Midnight Sun. I will get it as soon as I can when it's released in August, and I will read it as soon as I can because that book series has so many wonderful memories attached to it, and I'm excited for it. I'm not expecting some great work of literary fiction. I'm expecting a good time, and that I think will be achieved by that book. Kind of like with my thoughts on wishing that Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes was going to be about Haymitch, I do kind of wish that Stephenie Meyer would write a book from Carlisle's perspective, going back before he was a vampire and kind of transitioning through to a vampire and beyond. And I just would love that. His story seems so interesting, and every time we got tidbits of it as we were reading the 4 books in the saga, I always wanted more. Carlisle was by far my favorite character because he had so much depth and he seemed so caring and wonderful. And I know that there's people who don't like Carlisle, just like there's people who don't like every character out there. Nobody is going to be pleased with everything, but Carlisle was my favorite, and I would love someday for Stephenie Meyer to write a book from his perspective. All right, the last honest reader thought in this installment. All right, the last honest reader thought in this installment is that I sincerely hope that the rumors of book 3 and all right, the last honest reader thought in this installment is that I hope the rumors that Patrick Rothfuss is going to release book 3 in his Kingkiller Chronicle this August, I hope those are true. I hope more than anything that is true. I read the first book when I was in college, and I really enjoyed it. I fell head over heels for Kavoth. I loved the story. I loved the school setting, especially in that first one. And then I read the second one, and I have to say I had mixed feelings about the second one. The pacing was a little off. Like, we would go through these huge spurts where it was just super high action and really entertaining, and I felt like the plot was moving forward the way that I wanted it to. And then all of a sudden we just like hit a brick wall, and it would be really, really slow, and I would find myself for like 100 pages just being like, oh dear God, please, next thing. And overall, I felt satisfied with the book. I didn't love it as much as the first, but I still want to know what happens. Like, I want to see this series conclude, and it has been for freaking ever since the last book came out. And I get that he wants it to be as perfect as possible, but I fear that it's going to have the same symptoms that the movie Avatar did. So, Avatar, the movie with like the blue people and stuff that came out forever ago and was a huge blockbuster success, it's just been so many years since that first movie came out that I feel like when the second movie comes out, people aren't really going to care. They'll either not care at all, or they'll be like, oh my gosh, finally, and get really excited. But I feel like more people than not will just be like, whatever. And I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen to The Door of Stone, which is the third book in this series, as it's been so long that I'm afraid that the fandom, especially the fandom who was reading the books when they were coming out, are going to be like, good Lord, man, I just don't really care anymore. And I'm excited for it, but I have only been reading the books for about 2 to 3 years. Like, it's been significantly shorter periods of time between me reading the books. Like, I read book 1 and then read book 2 because they were already out, and it's now been a while since I read the second book, but nowhere near the length of the time that people would be waiting if they read the books when they first were released. So take that as you will. I would love more than anything if this August 2020 release date was actually a thing, but I fear greatly as a fan that it won't be, and that we will be stuck waiting even longer before it is released. And I hope it is released. I would be really, really disappointed if the series just kind of fell off. And I know there's a lot of theories as to why it's taken him this long to write it, and I guess, you know, to each their own. It's his story, it's his work, it's his life work. And I don't know what I would do in his position. I don't know. If I was an author who'd written 2 best-selling novels, I would probably feel a lot of pressure to make the third one perfect too, and I might be in that same boat. So I try not to judge that length of time. It's just as a fan, I am impatient, and I want to see how it wraps up, essentially. Alrighty, guys, that is the end of the Let's Be Real Honest Reader Thoughts Part 2. I will continue on with this series, and I will move on to a different topic in the future. I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe so that you're notified when I post new content, and don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Comment below if you have any other honest reader thoughts, or agree or even disagree with anything that I've said. Again, if you're a Cassandra Clare or Sarah J. Maas fan, give me some suggestions as of where to start with those series. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.